Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that you consider subscribing and stick around. I'm a full-time working mom with 2 kids and I share a lot of food and family and home content. In these videos, basically, I just like to show you a compilation of dinners that we have over a couple of weeks so that you guys can get new ideas for dinner as well. This week, a lot of my recipes are going to focus on things that I've made from items in my pantry and freezer since we are all trying to go out less now. So I'm going to be sharing with you my recipe for banana bread. I showed you some pork tacos there. Also a really delicious recipe for homemade dinner rolls if you're interested in making those, along with some other ideas. So I hope you enjoy. So tonight for dinner, we are having soup and sandwiches. So I made this turkey rice soup probably a couple months ago, and it's been in the freezer. So I just thawed out 2 containers of that, and I'm heating it up on the stove here. So this is just, actually I think I made this during Vlogmas. So we are getting it used up. So it's basically turkey, broth, rice, and vegetables. So I'm gonna heat that up. Then I'm also making some ham and cheese sliders. I make these on the savory butter King's Hawaiian rolls. Adam likes these better than the sweet ones. The original recipe calls for Swiss and ham, but I'm just going to use sharp cheddar cheese because that's what we have, and the rosemary ham from Trader Joe's. And then the sauce that goes on top, I put butter, Worcestershire, onion powder, and Dijon mustard. I'll link the recipe I use down below. I don't like to put the brown sugar in it because it just makes it too sweet. So I'm going to get this cut in half and assembled. So I'll link the original recipe down below that I use for these sliders. And I guess I wouldn't really call it a recipe, except I do refer to the butter topping that goes on it is really the only part of the recipe I follow. Obviously, you can customize these for any type of deli meat or cheese that you have in your refrigerator. It's a great way to use up deli meat if you have like some packages of turkey and ham or anything else sitting around, and it's a real crowd pleaser. Everyone in my family loves these, and the great part also is that you can totally freeze the Hawaiian rolls and get them out when you want them. These sandwiches also make really great leftovers, so even if you're a smaller family, I would recommend making the whole pan, and you'll definitely have some left over. They make great snacks or lunches throughout the week. Okay, so these are done. I left some without cheese for Kira, and these just have the ham and cheddar. So I'm gonna put these in the oven. I have it set at 375 for about 15 to 20 minutes until they are nice and brown and all heated through. All right, so here's what the sandwiches turned out like. I went ahead and cut them up so it was easier to serve. We got cottage cheese, some veggies, some everything but the bagel dip, some hummus, some turkey rice soup, and crackers. Tonight for dinner, I am making pineapple pork tacos. I'm so excited to eat these. So let me show you what is on the menu for tonight. So here in my skillet, I have about 1.5 pounds of ground pork, some taco seasoning, and a little bit of oil. I am using onion flakes instead of chopped onion just because that's what my kids prefer. They don't really like the big chunks or even the small chunks really of onion in the taco meat. So that's just what I prefer to use so I don't have to listen to them complain. So I'm just going to use my, what's this called? Meat chopper here. It's from Pampered Chef. I have one, but they have them on Amazon, so I'll link this one down below. But I'm just going to let this cook through. Usually this ground pork is pretty lean, so I probably won't have to drain it, but we'll see once it gets further along. So this is actually an every plate meal, and this video is not sponsored. I used my own money to buy this box, and we got this recipe along with another one for grilled cheese and tomato soup. Yes, I do use my own coupon codes sometimes to purchase products, so I'll link that coupon code down below. I think you guys can get, it's either $20 or $25 off your first box if you want to try it out. But we've enjoyed this, and we've tried this and Green Chef and Home Chef and a bunch of them, and this is probably one of our favorites so far actually, and it's pretty inexpensive. So along with this, I'm going to need flour tortillas, and then the pepper jack cheese actually came with the grilled cheese recipe, but I think I'm going to use it for this because my kids are not going to be wild about pepper jack grilled cheese. But I am going to pickle some red onion and jalapeno. I have the jalapeno over on the counter, and then these pineapple tidbits are going to go in with the pork, so that should be interesting. And then I'm also going to mix up some sour cream, sort of like lime crema for this recipe also. Alright, so here's what the pineapple pork mixture turned out like. I did add some extra salt and pepper, a little bit of chili powder, and then I just like to warm up the tortillas in the toaster oven. I just wrap them up in foil and heat them up in there. I got some pepper jack cheese, the pickled onion and jalapeno. That's just sliced onion, sliced jalapeno, lime juice, salt, pepper, and a little bit of sugar. Some lime crema, so just sour cream with lime zest, lime juice, salt, and then some shredded lettuce, some sliced up apples on the side, some taco sauce, and then I'm also heating up some leftover fish that we had last night because Connor really likes that, and I figured he might want fish tacos instead. Alright, so it's actually the following day, but I really wanted to give you guys an update on the pineapple pork tacos that we had last night that I just showed you. Adam really liked them. He said they were awesome. He has requested already that I make them again, and said that I should always make tacos like that from now on. So before we go on to the next meal, I just wanted to let you guys know that. Alright, so here's what I'm making for supper. So I am making cheeseburgers. Kira doesn't like cheeseburgers, so I went ahead and toasted her bun, but I just gave her a turkey and cheese sandwich. I made some fruit salad. Here's the toppings for the burgers: some onion, tomato, lettuce, and then I also have some, like, this is the recipe I'm using, which will be in a different video, but it's the Rachel Ray's, like, smash burgers, and you make kind of like a Big Mac sauce to put on top of it. And then I made some oven fries. These are just potatoes that I scrubbed and cut, and they have seasoning on them and salt and olive oil. And then there are the burgers and the buns I toasted back there. So if you guys are all caught up on my videos, you would have seen this in the 30-minute meals video that I did a couple weeks ago, but I still wanted to include it in here because it is definitely a pantry friendly option to make burgers and roasted potatoes. You see me here just putting the leftover fruit salad into jars. I really like to store them like this. They're easy to portion out and they keep really well in the fridge. Okay, so on this night, I pulled some pizza crust out of the freezer. I had gotten this from Trader Joe's several weeks beforehand, and I also had some homemade marinara sauce that I had frozen. I usually do that when I make big batches of tomato sauce, is freeze some. That way it makes for easy pasta and pizza. So I pulled these out of the freezer, and this amount, these 2 pizza crusts, are actually rather large, and it's the perfect amount for our family of 4. So I'm kind of going to make 2 different pizzas here. I'm going to do one with just cheese and pepperoni for the kids, and then the other one I am going to put some extra things on there like black olives and jalapenos for Adam and I. I will try and find the video where I made my homemade marinara sauce and link that down below. It's very easy and it tastes a lot better than
jarred marinara sauce, and it's a lot cheaper as well. These crusts from Trader Joe's are really good if you've never tried them before. You saw me there kind of just brushing them with a little bit of olive oil before I put on the toppings. I usually do that with any pizza crust when I make homemade pizza. It just kind of helps the crust crisp up a little bit more. So on the second pizza, I'm putting a little bit of cheddar cheese as well, because I was trying to use up the mozzarella that I had, and I'd used it all and I thought it needed a little bit more cheese. So I'm also going to put some jalapeno on this one and some black olive, like I said. If you want to try a really good pizza combination, try pepperoni, bacon, feta cheese, and jalapeno. There is a pizza place in the town where I work that makes a pizza like that, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's so good, and I've made it that way before at home, and it's delicious. So here's what the two pizzas looked like before I put them in the oven. I do cook them on foil just to cut down on the mess. So on this night also, we were trying some of this Angel Delight in the chocolate flavor that my friend Siobhan sent me. She lives in the UK, and the only thing I can think to compare this to is sort of like a chocolate pudding like we would see here in the US. So if you guys are familiar with this, let me know. Basically, you just take the chocolate powder and you whisk it up with cold milk. The only thing is that when you refrigerate it, it has more of like a mousse, like airy consistency than pudding does. So it was a little bit different, but I just made that one pouch, so there was just a little bit, and the kids split that along with some fruit and their pizza for dinner. But they were, of course, excited to try it because, you know, number one, it's chocolate, and number two, anything they can try, or anytime they can try something from a different country, they always get super excited about that. So here was the pizza when it came out of the oven. I did maybe overcook that one or this one just a titch. The crust is a little brown, but it was still good. We did salvage it, and here is the completed cloud dessert.
All right, so tonight for dinner, I am going to make some soup, but I also want to make some homemade rolls with it. I haven't made these in a while. So I'm making these homemade Parker House dinner rolls. I have made this recipe a couple times, but it's been a while. This recipe is originally from Taste of Home in 2007. I'll type it out down below. So what I have here in my mixer bowl is half a cup of shortening. I'm using butter flavor shortening because that's what I have on hand. A fourth of a cup of sugar and 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm just gonna pour in, this is boiling water that I boiled in my kettle, and that is 1.5 cups. And so all I'm going to do is just stir this around and let the shortening melt before we move on to the next step. So the shortening is now all melted. The recipe says to cool this to 110 to 115 degrees, which is basically just warm enough where you can hold your finger in the water without sort of pulling it back, but it's still warm. You want it to be warm because that helps the yeast bloom, but you don't want it to be too hot because that will kill the yeast. So to this mixture, I'm adding half a cup of warm water that I mixed with 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast. This is the kind that I used, and I keep it in the refrigerator. It stays good for a long time. Next, I'm going to add 3 beaten eggs and 3 cups of flour to this. Okay, so I added the additional flour. The recipe calls for 6 3/4 cups to 7 1/4 cup flour. Basically, you just have to judge how much you need. It will depend on, you know, whether you live in a dry climate or it's humid or whatever the case is. So I added about 7 cups of flour, and then if you're going to make this without a KitchenAid, you totally can. I'm using my KitchenAid with a dough hook, but if you don't have one, you can definitely knead this by hand. You want to knead this for 6 to 7 minutes, but I'm obviously going to let the mixer do it, so I'm just going to turn this on low and set my timer. All right, so my rolls are done kneading. You can see that The dough is very soft and elastic, and it smells delicious. If you guys have never baked, homemade bread and rolls before, just the smell of it is just so good. There's nothing like it. So I have clean hands, obviously. I am going to pull the dough off the hook with a little bit of flour on my fingers. And then you want to let this rise. And so what we're going to do is put it in a bowl here. I have an oiled bowl. This is actually one that I got from my grandma. It's one of my favorites. It's a vintage Pyrex bowl. It's one of the biggest bowls that I have for this type of thing. So I'm going to turn the dough out into here, into a ball. I'll flip it over so then the top of it will be oiled. And then my oven has a bread proofing setting, which I just discovered last week. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on that, and then I'll just cover this like with a tea towel and stick it in the oven for 45 minutes to an hour until it doubles in size. Okay, so I'm going to cover this up. I forgot to mention too that this recipe makes quite a few. I think it makes at least 36 rolls. So I don't know if I do this with one hand. So we're going to have leftovers, and I'm probably going to end up freezing half of the rolls for later use. Look at the dough. You can see it's risen way over the side of the bowl. So I'm going to punch this down and turn it out onto a floured work surface, and then we're going to cut it into 2.5-inch circles. Okay, so the recipe was correct. It did make about 3 dozen. So I put 12 in this pan, and this is what we're going to have for dinner tonight. So all I'll do is basically just cover this up and let it rise until it's time for dinner, and then we'll bake them. The rest of them I'm going to freeze. So if you've ever had like Rhodes dinner rolls, this is basically like making your own. So I put these in a Ziploc bag, and I'll just freeze these flat. And then these I went ahead and put in pie tins just because I had a couple extra ones. So the process for baking these once they're frozen is you would just remove them from the freezer probably about 3 hours, well, 3 to 6 hours before you're going to eat them. Let them rise in a warm place, and then just bake them as you normally would. So I'm going to wrap these up and get them in the freezer. All right, so here's my rolls after the second rise. I'm going to put these in the oven at 400 for about 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, so here are the rolls. I already took some out because we're eating right now. I would recommend brushing these with salted butter. They're very, very tender. This is like why it's my favorite roll recipe, is because it has such like a tender crumb. So definitely try making these. I touched that one, so I will eat it. But here are the rolls, and then I made this zuppa toscana soup, but instead of potatoes, this one has cauliflower in it, and everyone really likes it. So I'll link this recipe down below, but that's what we're having for dinner tonight.
All right, so the next meal idea I'm going to show you is just something that we had for lunch, and I wanted to share it because sometimes I feel like it's the simple things that we forget about, but this is BLTs and good old macaroni and cheese. So you saw me sauteing some bacon there, getting that nice and crispy, and then I had a box of this Cracker Barrel white cheddar mac and cheese in the pantry that I wanted to use up, and so I was boiling the pasta, and while the bacon cooked, I got my tomatoes sliced. These were surprisingly good tomatoes for the Midwest at this time. And then I had some lettuce, some mayo. I also got out some turkey and some cheese in case anyone wanted club sandwiches. Usually I do also put cheese on my BLTs. Adam thinks I'm ridiculous, but I really like it. So that was just kind of my assembly station for after the bacon was done cooking. After the noodles were cooked in the macaroni, I just went ahead and stirred in the cheese. If you guys can get your hands on this mac and cheese, it's really, really good. They have several different kinds of the Cracker Barrel mac and cheese, but we've tried, I think, all of them, and we like all of them. But this bacon was actually a little bit thick, and so I had to cook it over like low heat just so it wouldn't burn before it was crisped through. Definitely when I make BLTs, I want my bacon crispy, not soggy. I also always toast my bread for BLTs. Let me know if you guys do that too. But again, super simple meal using basically ingredients that I had on hand. This isn't something that I planned out and had to go to the store and get stuff. It was just made on the fly using ingredients from the refrigerator and pantry. All right, so this next meal I made was a breakfast, and it was also a meal that I made on the fly. I found this recipe for these easy cheddar biscuits, and this came from a Cook's Illustrated cookbook. It was a breakfast cookbook, I think a special edition one that I got at the grocery store one time. But basically this recipe is super simple, and these cheddar biscuits are really good. I would definitely recommend you try this recipe. I will type it out in the description box below if you're interested in trying it. Basically the dry ingredients are flour, baking powder, sugar, and salt. And then you just add cream and cheddar cheese, and that's it. Kind of the inspiration for this was that we had a pack of sausage in the freezer, and Adam was like, oh, it'd be really good if we had biscuits and gravy. And I'm like, well, we don't really have any buttermilk. Let me see if I can find, a biscuit recipe that I have all the ingredients for. And I found this one, and it worked out so well. I would have never thought to make cheddar biscuits with biscuits and gravy, which just sounds totally sinful, but ended up being really good. So once you get all the ingredients kind of stirred together, then I just floured my counter. And basically, you don't really have to roll this or anything. You kind of just knead it around until all of the flour gets mixed in, and then pat it into a circle that's about 8 inches wide. And then you could cut this into like biscuit shape, like round or square biscuits, but the original recipe just said to cut it into triangles, almost like scones. So that's what I did. And I wasn't quite sure how this was going to turn out. It was one of those things where the recipe is so simple. You're just like, how can this even turn out really well? But it did. And here I am washing my hands, stepping away from the camera. I didn't even realize this part was in there. But anyway, I obviously had to get out a baking tray for these biscuits, and basically I just used a paring knife to cut it into 8 wedges, put it on the tray, and baked it, and you'll see in a little bit how they came out. Okay, so here are the sausage patties that I had fried up, and then in the grease in the pan, I just added a tablespoon of butter and a couple tablespoons of flour, and I'll just whisk that around until it is cooked through. Then I added a couple of cups of milk along with some extra salt and pepper for flavoring, and that is how you make sausage gravy. Super easy. How delicious do those cheddar biscuits look? Oh my God, they were so good. Here is my gravy that needs thickening. You just want to kind of keep that over medium-low heat until it bubbles and thickens up to your liking. This is definitely not a pretty meal. It's very, very white. You got the eggs and the biscuits and the gravy, but I assure you it was a delicious breakfast. Okay, so on this night, I'm just showing you a Home Chef meal that I made. This is a chicken satay, and once again, I'm featuring a delivery meal, but no, this is not sponsored. I did pay my own money for it. On this side, we're having some of these chicken pot stickers. If you guys have never tried these, they're really, really good. I can totally recommend them. Come in a big bag at Walmart, and they last us about 3 or 4 meals. So I was going to go ahead and simmer those in a nonstick skillet while I cook the chicken stir fry. This was actually a really good recipe. It kind of came with some peanut satay sauce that the chicken was sort of combined with to go on top of rice, and we all really liked it. Alongside came some bok choy, so I am just chopping that up into pretty fine pieces because I'm going to kind of end up making an Asian slaw out of this with some other veggies. One thing I wanted to mention too is I don't ever want you guys to feel like I'm like pressuring you to try these meal kit boxes. I honestly have a lot of fun using them just because it gets me to try new recipes. It's almost sort of like a little like crafting kit that comes in the mail, except it's not crafts, it's a recipe, but I really enjoy cooking, so I have fun with it. But especially now, you know, that so many areas of the country are really sparse in terms of groceries. I have not had one problem getting groceries through these services. I've ordered from both Every Plate and Home Chef, and I've always gotten the produce. They even have options, you know, for meat and everything. So if you guys haven't tried them before and you want to, especially during this time, I'll have those links down below. The Home Chef one, I think, is probably maybe the best deal. I don't know. I think you get $35 off your first box, which actually ends up giving you a $25 box, which is a pretty good deal. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I know that there are parts of the country that are super sparse in terms of groceries. So once the chicken was cooked, I went ahead and squeezed in that satay sauce. I did have to add a little bit of chicken broth to that. You'll see that here in a little bit, but with those veggies, I tossed it with some Asian vinaigrette that I had in the refrigerator. I'll post this recipe down below. It's a bok choy salad recipe that you guys have probably seen me make before. I kind of just put my own idea of veggies into it. I put in shredded carrot and cucumber, bok choy, pepper, and then I like to put some cilantro and a squeeze of lime juice as well. Super fresh and delicious side for any Asian meal. So to that satay sauce, I did add a little bit of chicken broth along with the peanuts that it came with and kind of a slurry of cornstarch and water just because I wanted the sauce to be a little bit thicker. And I also added a few drops of sriracha. So there is our completed bok choy salad. Ended up being really good. Even the kids liked it. I steamed up some rice combined with some edamame that came in the Home Chef box. And here was our completed dinner. So rice, chicken satay, dumplings, and a side salad. Really, really good and filling. Okay, so whenever I think of cooking out of my pantry, I always feel like banana bread is one of those things that we can all make on the fly, especially if we have a bowl full of brown bananas sitting on our counter. But today I'm sharing with you the recipe that I use for banana bread. It is Martha Stewart's recipe. It is so delicious. I'm doubling this batch today just because I had quite a few bananas, and banana bread freezes really well. So I went ahead and made 2 loaves, one to have at this time, and then one to have for later that I wrapped and put in the freezer. So you see me there creaming together some softened butter and sugar. I'm going to add my eggs, and I do like to use my KitchenAid stand mixer for this, especially if I'm making a double batch, just because it makes it a lot easier to get all of that flour mixed in. After the wet ingredients were done, I added flour and salt and baking soda. Next, I added up my mashed banana, 1 cup of yogurt, or you could use sour cream, and some vanilla. And you can add nuts to this recipe. I usually don't do that. If it was up to me and me only, I probably would add walnuts to it, but my kids they don't necessarily dislike nuts, but they complain about it sometimes. So I'm using these 2 long, narrow loaf pans that I got based on a recommendation from my friend Christine at Frugal Fit Mom. They're super awesome bread loaf pans, and they're kind of long and skinny, so they cook bread a lot quicker. I'll link them down below. I would definitely recommend them. So here's what they looked like when they came out of the oven. So golden brown and delicious. If you guys have not tried this banana bread recipe, I totally have to recommend it to you. It's very buttery, very tender. It is the best banana bread recipe I have ever tried. So I wanted to thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope that this inspired you to make some dishes out of your pantry and freezer, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.